Hi, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Access Mutual Fund. As you know, we try to see you every week, every month, depending on the topic. So, for today, I have with me Mr. Mahavir Kaswa. He leads passive research for Access Mutual Fund and has about 15 years of experience actively in this ecosystem as well as with other AMCs in the past. The topic for today is actually quite interesting. A lot of y'all would have already read the title. It's about capital markets. You all would be thinking that, boss, why is an AMC doing an NFO about its own sector, right? And it's a curious question.
It is.
But to unpack that, I have Mahavir. So without further ado, hi Mahavir and welcome back.
Hi Siddhant, thank you for having me.
So Mahavir, before we get into the nitty-gritties, right? Fundamental question: capital markets होता क्या है?
सो अगर आप देखो ना, कैपिटल मार्केट इज़ बेसिकली फाइनेंशियल मार्केट प्लेस जहाँ पे जो इन्वेस्टर के पास सरप्लस पैसा होता है और जो नीडी लोग होते हैं, जो कॉर्पोरेट्स होते हैं जिनको कैपिटल चाहिए होता है, इनको एक कॉमन गैदरिंग जहाँ पे हो सकता है वो है कैपिटल मार्केट। इसके मल्टीपल टाइप्स हो सकते हैं, जैसे प्राइमरी मार्केट जहाँ पे कॉर्पोरेट्स प्राइमरी शेयर इशू से करते हैं, फर्स्ट टाइम शेयर इशू करते हैं या बॉन्ड्स इशू करते हैं, जहाँ पे वो पैसा रेज करते हैं फॉर देयर एक्सपेंशन प्लान्स और फाइनेंसिंग देयर डिफरेंट प्रोजेक्ट्स एज वेल। And the other type is secondary market, जहाँ पे investors or fund managers they trade themselves to exchange the securities in the capital market. One of the core function of a capital market is basically saving mobilization and capital formation. And for a robust capital market, एक जो सबसे important महत्वपूर्ण चीज़ जो होती है वो है price discovery, transaction efficiency, जहाँ पे अगर आपका time required to execute a transaction and the cost for that also has to be very low. And I think on top of it, the most important thing is robust risk management and regulatory framework. So all this put together becomes a very good capital market that we probably should look forward.
Right. So Mahavir, let's unpack that a little. What are the constituents of the capital market? Now, like we were just discussing before we started rolling, that this is a very unique theme, right? We're talking about facilitators of capital. We're talking about folks who are actually seeking capital, also seeking opportunities to deploy their capital. So can you help me understand what this ecosystem entails?
बिल्कुल, अगर आप देखो तो आई थिंक सबसे दो मेन इंग्रेडिएंट जो होते हैं, पिलर बोल सकते हैं, वो है कि कैपिटल प्रोवाइडर्स विच इज़ इन्वेस्टर्स विच कैन बी स्मॉल इन्वेस्टर, HNIs, domestic investors, foreign investors, venture capital, private equity, all this put together become a capital providers. सेकंड मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट पिलर जो होता है वो कैपिटल सीकर्स, जहाँ पे कॉर्पोरेट्स, गवर्नमेंट्स या फाइनेंशियल इंस्टीट्यूशंस जो अलग अलग बॉन्ड्स इशुएंस से या इक्विटी इशुएंस से पैसा रेज करते हैं टू फंड द प्रोजेक्ट्स वी डिस्कस अर्लियर। बट इन दोनों के बीच में एक जो वाइटल ब्रिज जो होता है वो होता है एनेबलर्स का, वो होता है फैसिलिटेटर्स का और एक स्टैट्यूटरी एंटिटीज़ का। इसमें कौन कौन आते हैं? स्टॉक एक्सचेंजेस आते हैं, ब्रोकरेज हाउसेस आते हैं, एसेट मैनेजमेंट कंपनीज, रजिस्टर्ड ट्रांसफर एजेंट, डिपॉजिटरीज, फिनटेक कंपनीज जो अभी काफ़ी ट्रेंड में भी है। सो ऑल दिस पुट टुगेदर बिकम अ एंटायर इकोसिस्टम ऑफ कैपिटल मार्केट।
राइट। तो महावीर, इस इंडेक्स में मोस्टली 20 स्टॉक्स आते हैं, राइट? एंड हम आई थिंक ये हमारे इन्वेस्टर्स को पता होगा कि हमारे सारे इंडेक्स फंड एक स्पेसिफिक रूल सेट फॉलो करते हैं। तो आप हमारे इन्वेस्टर्स को एक्सप्लेन कर सकते हैं कि इस पोर्टफोलियो के व्हाट आर द सेलिएंट फीचर्स ऑफ दिस पोर्टफोलियो?
करेक्ट। सो हर एक पैसिव फंड के लिए एक अंडरलाइन बेंचमार्क होता है। तो हमारा जो NFO है, एक्सिस निफ्टी कैपिटल मार्केट्स इंडेक्स फंड, इसका जो अंडरलाइन बेंचमार्क है वो निफ्टी कैपिटल मार्केट इंडेक्स है। और हर एक बेंचमार्क के लिए मेथोडोलॉजी होता ही है जिससे स्टॉक सिलेक्शन क्राइटेरिया डिफाइन होते हैं। तो इसका जो पोर्टफोलियो कंस्ट्रक्शन का तरीका है वो है, इट स्टार्ट्स विद निफ्टी 500 कंपोजिशन, जहाँ पे निफ्टी के 500 स्टॉक्स स्टार्ट किया जाता है। एंड आफ्टर दैट द बेसिक इंडस्ट्रीज सच एज asset management companies, exchanges, data platform, brokerages are some of these intermediaries that we just talked about becomes eligible to be part of the index. अभी एक इसमें इम्पॉर्टेंट जो चीज़ है कि जब पोर्टफोलियो जब बनता है आपका, तो उसमें डाइवर्सिफिकेशन या रिस्क रिडक्शन फ्रॉम अ कॉन्सेंट्रेशन पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू, द मैक्सिमम वेट ऑफ अ स्टॉक इज कैप्ड एट 20%। और ये जो पूरा पोर्टफोलियो का रिबैलेंसिंग होता है, एक पूरा चर्न देखा जाता है, वो हर 6 महीने में एक बार होता है, विच इज़ मार्च एंड सितंबर।
राइट। तो Mavi, that's very interesting to understand that I think, like you said, that this involves every single touch point, right, that a transaction goes through before reaching its final destination. Let's time travel, right? Let's go back, say 30, 40, 30 years when you started investing. How is it different from today? मतलब जैसे हम बोलते हैं आजकल के ज़माने में कि जैसे हमारी खुद की मोबाइल ऐप है जहाँ पे हम इन्वेस्टर्स को बोलते हैं कि आप सिर्फ 1 मिनट में इन्वेस्ट कर सकते हैं. बट if the for the folks watching, what was it like in the early 90s? If you had to start an SIP in the early 90s, what would your life had been?
Interesting. At the cost of sounding old, I would still go ahead and explain that. 90s में you used to fill in the physical form, attach 12 or 18 or 24 little checks and pin it and send it through courier to the AMCs. एंड अगर उसमें कोई केवाईसी का इशू आया है, अगर कोई साइन मिसमैच आया है, देन अगेन बैक एंड फोर्थ चलता रहेगा. एंड ओनली व्हेन द डॉक्यूमेंट्स आर क्लियर, then the SIP will start, or any initial investment or lump sum investment will start. And it used to take quite a few days to weeks as well sometimes to get SIP or investment going. ये 90s की बात हुई. एंड आज जो से आपने बताया कि इट इज़ मोर देन फ्यू मिनट्स, इट्स मोर देन इनफ फॉर अस टू स्टार्ट एन SIP फॉर अ न्यू इन्वेस्टर ऑल्सो. जैसे कि कोई एग्जिस्टिंग इन्वेस्टर होगा उसके लिए तो फ्यू सेकंड्स शायद काफ़ी हो गए टू सिलेक्ट द फंड एंड मेक एन पेमेंट. बट अगर नए इन्वेस्टर के लिए भी जैसे कि एक KYC करना पड़ेगा, एक दैट्स मैंडेटरी प्रोसेस एज पर से भी, वो सब पकड़ते हुए भी शायद मुझे लगता है कि 2 मिनट इज़ मोर देन इनफ फॉर देम टू स्टार्ट एन SIP.
That's bananas. Like if I would have been in that, if you were to say airdrop me into that time zone, I would go mad.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Marvin, let's broaden the context here, right? Today, nowadays, we've seen, especially after the pandemic, the number of IPOs that have come through. The primary market participation has increased. You've seen so many secondary market transactions also happen. It's so easy for people to invest in an IPO now, right? You go to your platform of choice, you put in the order, and if you get an allotment, you get an allotment. 90s में क्या होता था?
Oh भाई, बहुत मुश्किल. You used to stand in queues. There used to be chaos in terms of getting the IPO forms. So it was chaotic. Simply एक Demat account भी अगर open करना है, there has to be multiple signatures. And you have to send that form to the Mumbai office, someone sitting in like let's say Rajasthan or Delhi. It used to be my nightmare for those people. And like I said again, the same story, back and forth. अगर कोई documents में mistakes है या sign mismatch ऐसे, those were the stories there. But again, today as we speak, I think thanks to digitization, the digital public infrastructure, which basically is identity through Aadhaar, payment through UPI, and data through data exchanges. Actually, this has enabled the onboarding of new investors like unimaginable time.
Right.
It has completely removed the friction of geography, जहाँ पे कोई भी एक बंदा जो एक फार रिमोट एरिया में बैठा हुआ है, उसके लिए भी आज एक डिमेट अकाउंट ओपन करना है या म्यूचुअल फंड SIP स्टार्ट करना है या लंप सम इन्वेस्टमेंट करना है, काफ़ी आसान हो गया है.
Right.
As compared to 90s, that was like probably it's unimaginable now.
Yeah. No, and I have two points there for you, right? Let me ask you the first one. So, like we've seen on a few TV shows that are set in the 90s, that how the bullpen used to be in the exchange, where people used to be shouting.
Yes.
How was that like? And imagine, so a lot of our folks also do, they do invest in stocks. They invest through all these platforms. Juxtapose it. How was it then and how is it now? What was it being physically in that bullpen like?
करेक्ट. सो अगर वहाँ पे देखो, इंडिया का कैपिटल मार्केट जो ट्रेस बैक होता है 1875, जब बॉम्बे स्टॉक एक्सचेंज, अभी BSE बुलाते हैं उसको, वाज एस्टेब्लिश्ड. बट द रियल फाउंडेशन ऑफ इंडियाज मॉडर्न कैपिटल मार्केट दैट वी टॉक अबाउट नाउ वाज लेड इन 1990s, जहाँ पे इलेक्ट्रॉनिक ट्रेडिंग सिस्टम्स वाज लॉन्च, डिमैटेरियलाइजेशन वाज इंट्रोड्यूस्ड, डिपॉजिटरी वाज एस्टैब्लिश्ड, एंड द मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट आई थिंक द SEBI वाज एम्पावर्ड विद स्टैट्यूटरी अथॉरिटी. This all put together laid a very strong foundation for the modern era of capital market as we see today. And eventually, as we saw the capital market progress with different product innovations, global integrations, SME exchange launch was another very important milestone in my point, because आप अगर देखो कि जो स्मॉल एंड मीडियम एंटरप्राइजेस होते हैं, उनको अगर कोई कैपिटल रेज करना है तो दे आर जनरली डिपेंडेंट ऑन बैंक्स एंड NBFCs. बट अगर उनको डायरेक्टली इन्वेस्टर से कैपिटल रेज करना है तो आज वो काफ़ी चीपर एंड इफेक्टिव ऑप्शन आज उनको SME एक्सचेंज के थ्रू अवेलेबल है. एंड यू मस्ट हैव सीन लॉट ऑफ IPOs हैपन ऑन द SME एक्सचेंज एज वेल, एंड इन्वेस्टर्स हैव मेड गुड वेल्थ आउट ऑफ दैट एज वेल. द रिसेंट मोस्ट आई कैन टॉक अबाउट इज GIFT City, आई थिंक ग्लोबल गेटवे टू Indians to global markets, and recent inclusion of Indian bonds to global bond index has been another few pivotal changes that has happened. The COVID जो आपने बताया था, वहाँ पे एक जो डीमेट अकाउंट का जो ग्रोथ हुआ है वो भी काफ़ी एक्सेप्शनल था. कोविड से पहले अगर आप देखोगे डीमेट अकाउंट का ग्रोथ वाज वेरी सबपार और लाइक अ काइंड ऑफ अराउंड 8 to 9%, and post COVID it has significantly jumped to 33%. A lot of us may talk about कि work from home has must have caused that thing, but yes, of course, why not? The work from home has definitely has caused a significant jump in the interest from the retail investors in the capital market, but that wouldn't have been possible without digitization that we spoke about it. So
Right.
all this put together has been a significant shift in India's capital market from early 1800s to 19s to 2010s and maybe present market.
Ah, I think, Mahavir, what you've said is it's a whole time lapse, and thank you for that. Let's dig in a little more, right? Like Mahavir mentioned, that we have a large population, we have access to the internet, we have a lot of marketplaces which enable transactions. We have UBI, so maybe some data. Pardon it in case it's a little dated, but the last I read, India has about 1.2 billion smartphones.
Yes.
And of these 1.2 billion smartphones, about 800 odd million people are either on 3G, 4G or 5G networks already.
Correct.
Which means that especially in the bottom 30 cities or in tier 2, 3, 4 cities, this is a hypothesis that the first screen a user from there will see will probably be a mobile screen, will probably be a smartphone. So smartphone is actually much more than what it used to be. Earlier, I remember when I got my first phone, it was a black and white Nokia, and the best thing I could do was play Snake on it.
Yes.
Right? But in today's day and age, it has been converted into an educator, into an opportunity. Similarly with UPI, with so many of us using UPI in our daily lives, right? From say buying a ticket to get into the metro, to paying an auto wala till you reach your office, to buying breakfast, to buying a cup of tea, to you name it, and UPI is there. It's ingrained in our everyday lives. For that matter, even paying for my SIPs, all of my SIPs are now on UPI autopay. I think this ecosystem, like Mahavir said, is the true enabler. And so, Mahavir, what do you think? So, I remember we just had a discussion before we started rolling again that we are only at about 6% financialization of our savings to equities. Where do you think, where is the first world here? Where is US? Where is China? Where do we stack up there?
I think हम लोग काफ़ी there is a huge scope for us to grow from where we are today. Like you said, 6%. The global market or the global peers like US and China or US and Japan particularly are way ahead. I think they are into close to 22 or 18% of financialization of savings. But you just touch upon a very interesting point, which I thought may be important for our viewers to also understand, that is growing domestic savings. Back in 2000s, the overall gross domestic savings that India had was around 100 billion a year. It has grown to now close to 1100 billions. It's a massive growth.
Wow.
And if you would notice that naturally for our investors or for the savers or citizens, the natural way to invest was either bank deposits, gold, or real estates. Now, thanks to the lot of awareness by SEBI, by AMCs, and all the intermediaries, now a lot of awareness has increased, which is resulting into a lot of people now coming to the India's capital market. Not just that also, but also if you see over the last 2 decades or maybe 3 decades, in fact, if you look at the numbers, the Indian stock market has given an outstanding performance compared to the global markets. That has also resulted into more money coming in, not just from the domestic investors and institutional investors, but also from foreign capital. So this put together again has increased the attractiveness of India's capital market.
Right.
One more step further is basically digitization, the main catalyst or the enabler of all the entire this penetration of that we talked about.
Yeah. So I think what Mahavi touched upon was quite unique, right? We've seen the number of people who started investing more or started trading, etc. Mahavir, how important a turning point do you think the pandemic was? Because if you look at the trajectory of India, we were probably, it was like a sinus rhythm, right? But then something happened in COVID and a lot of our parameters just hockey sticked.
Yes.
Like Mahavir mentioned, especially on our Demats, in terms of our SIP numbers, both in count and amount at an Indian level. And we will dig into these data points also. But what do you think changed in COVID? Like, what do you think went in? Say, so for example, when the pandemic was, when pandemic hit, I was about 26, 27. And when we were getting out of it, I was closer to 30, right? My life completely changed at that time,
Absolutely.
because before that, uh, I probably had one or two SIPs running, but before I started those SIPs, I would think for say weeks, if not months, yeah, should I start this 5,000 rupees? Yeah, 5,000 रुपये मैं कहीं और नहीं लगा सकता, etc. But as we were getting out of COVID and returning to normal life, it became simpler.
Yeah.
Platforms became simpler, education became simpler. YouTube as a platform, I think, became an educator for me
Explosive.
more than
Yes.
anything
Absolutely.
else. So, what do you think was the primary catalyst? What changed?
I think ease of doing transaction in among all the things, like of course stock market return has been also exceptional post COVID, but nobody knew that the market will give us so much returns. But the reason people came towards capital market and investment, financials of investment that we talk about it, is because of the simplicity, right? Now with a few clicks, you can just simply log into a particular AMC website and or maybe app, and you can just simply invest. I think that is the biggest enabler in my view that resulted. And just look step back, look at the number of e-commerce users. It's huge, right? What all they require? They require a good smartphone, an ability to understand e-commerce journey, and I think ability to make a payment.
Why UPI?
Same, exactly.
Yeah.
What is different required in the mutual funds, right? It's simple as that. Or an investor who want to buy stock on through their own preferred broker, also same journey, right? Almost same journey. Like select the stock that you want to buy, or select the fund, for example, capital market fund that we're talking about. If someone want to just make a payment in like few minutes, it should be doable. So I think the biggest catalyst, as we spoke already, is that. But numbers are very interesting. If you look at that, especially in the mutual fund AUM growth that has happened,
Yeah.
has been very explosive. 2016, the AUM of mutual fund at entire level was about 10 lakh 40,000 crores, which has grown almost 7 times to 77 lakh crores.
Wow.
In the 10 years. This has come at 22% growth rate. But what is more interesting and very satisfying to me is SIPs. I think SIP has held Indian capital market very strong, especially when the foreign capital is going out. We have seen few years where the foreign money came in, but of course last couple of years we have seen outflow of foreign capital. But the SIP was one such flow which has helped Indian capital markets stay resilient and probably not fall as it used to fall in early 90s or early 2000s that we have seen. The SIPs in a financial year was around 44,000 crores. As a book SIP, it has reached to almost 3.5 lakh crore. This has come at 26% CAGR. One of the important point which barely any of us from the capital market speak about is flows from B20 cities, which is beyond top 30 cities. If you look at the AUM in 2019 was about 5 lakh crores. It has reached to 17 lakh crore, almost 3 times. That's another significant growth, in my opinion, that resulted into, that shows basically penetration of a mutual fund, not just to now top 3 cities or top metro cities, but also to a lot of remote regions as well. That's another interesting trend. Apart from this, I think exchange volumes are now, as we speak, capital markets, the one of the components of a capital market fund would be exchanges.
Right.
And what we have seen, enormous growth in the exchange volumes over the last 10 years, not just in equity market, which is cash market, but also in derivative market. So all of these put together, the beneficiaries are exchanges, depositories, asset management companies, the RTA, which is the registered and transfer agents, would definitely, and AMCs also. There are plenty of AMCs that are listed now in the India, and that would be benefited because of that.
Right. So, Mavi, that brings me to a very unique question. Like you mentioned, that financialization of savings has happened. People are now, they see the upside of, not parking money in a traditional savings account or an FD, but to deploy it as capital. Let's look at so this is, say, the LHS of the equation. Let's look at the RHS, right? How does this help how does this help the ecosystem grow, and therefore what does it unlock? So because we say, for example, what are capital markets? They're essentially an intermediary that takes money from one, say from where it's an excess to someone who needs it, as a very layman example. What do you think it unlocks, both in terms of the chain as well as the output?
I think the most important that we have seen the explosive growth in terms of the volume, the transactions, and the AUM also is definitely unlocking the revenue growth and the profit growth for the underlying intermediaries. But what is more, another interesting, satisfying thing to us is wealth creation for the middle class. I think with the sheer stock market performance, what we have seen, India's market has outperformed global market with a substantial margin, and that has resulted into good wealth creation, which also results into more money coming back to the Indian markets by the middle class and of the foreign investors as well.
Right. So, okay, now another very unique thing that comes to my mind is that a lot of stocks in the overall index are almost monopolistic in nature, right? We did briefly discuss this, but what do you think makes them so unique? Is it the fact that they were first to get the technology out? Were they first to market? Or is it just the fact that it's such a unique problem that they're solving that no one has been able to solve it? What makes them so unique?
I totally agree. Like if you look at break down the entire composition, there are few segments such as exchanges, depositories, or RTAs. Those will be predominantly either monopolistic or duopolistic kind of a thing. Why? Because you would probably not be able to. I mean, all these entities work on the scale and the technology, and first in the market also plays a very important role, right? So all this put together definitely plays an important role, but also on the other hand, you would notice that the brokers and the AMCs, there are plenty of competition among them. There are like 40 plus AMCs, and there are like maybe 10, 15, 20 brokers also that are available. So it's a balance of both, right? There are few entities which are more self-regulated entities, probably if you can call it exchanges and depositories kind of thing.
Yep.
And there's another entity which is AMCs and brokers, wherein you have enough competition available.
Right. So, Mahavir, that brings me to a little more, let's get into a little more detail, right? In our PPT, we've compared the performance of this index to the Nifty 500. We've also seen the last few years being choppy at the markets. Rather, let's look at the period, say, since we were getting out of COVID, but then say the Russia-Ukraine war started, and then we've had skirmishes here and there. We are just getting out of a war in the Middle East. How do you think has this index performed in terms of volatility and against a broad-based index like the Nifty 500?
Yeah, I mean, last few years has been extremely stressful for a lot of investors, including us. If you look at last 1 year performance, the capital market had actually an outstanding run, and I'm talking about the numbers for the last one as of end of March. The 1 year CAGR or returns by the capital market is about 25%, which is compared to broad market, which is about negative 2.9%.
My God.
But interesting thing to note here is this index, of course, has a little smaller history, which is about 8 to 9 years.
Yeah.
But again, what impresses me is the performance. The CAGR this index has generated is about 24.6% compared to broader market is about 12.5%. So almost more than double.
More than double.
But again, it comes with a more risk as well.
Yes.
Like any thematic index, this capital market index would also experience more volatility. And it's natural. It's important for us also to understand that why there is volatility. Any broad-based index get benefited with diversification of different sectors and industries put together. Capital market being a very niche and very thematic kind of an index would definitely not get that benefit.
Right.
And hence you would of course find more volatility. These companies are growing very rapidly. Hence also you may experience more volatility. But what is also interesting to note here is these companies, the capital market companies, do earn money on fee-based.
Right.
Which means more the transactions, more the volume, more the AUM, you will earn more.
Right.
Which also means if market do well, you would do much better.
Yeah.
And not just because of the mark to market, but also with the market going up, it will attract more investors.
Right.
So your net sales or the incremental market share from the overall investments would also grow. So it's a double-edged sword. When market goes up, it will go significantly up, and when market corrects, it will have its own bad phase as well.
Right. I think that's a pretty fair observation, Mahavir. You mentioned that it's seen handsome performance. It's outperformed the Nifty 500 hands down. Let's look at the market cap split. Right? This is predominantly a mid and small cap portfolio. Right? So how do you think this index should align in an individual's portfolio? Do you think this is a core theme, or do you think this is better as a satellite play?
I think it's a very important point you touch upon. In my view, this again thematic, more riskier, But at the same time, I do believe that if investor has a long-term view, it's an excellent investment bet for them, for especially informed investor, where they can actually look to invest for minimum 5 to 7 years and probably can look for a good capital gain. Hopefully, all of us experience that. The allocation should be around 5 to 15% is what I would probably look about it.
Okay. Now, Vavid, you mentioned the point-to-point returns. You've not mentioned my favorite, which is SIP. अगर मैंने 10,000 रुपए की SIP की होती, तो आज उसका क्या हो जाता?
Interesting. So, like I said, capital market has done exceedingly well. अगर हम लोग 10,000 की SIP करते हैं, तो 5 साल में आपका लगभग 6 लाख रुपए का निवेश होता, और उस 6 लाख का जो वैल्यूएशन है लगभग 13,60,000 रुपए होता, which is enormous. And mind it, यहाँ पे 10,000 का SIP कर रहे हो, 6 लाख बड़ा अमाउंट लगता है, but वो 10,000 per month becomes very convenient for the investor, and the investor should definitely continue the SIPs in such volatile themes as well.
Right. I think that's actually very close to our house views, right? Traditionally, we always tell our investors to stay invested during choppy markets.
Correct.
And especially stay with your SIP, because that's where compounding really does its job, right?
Absolutely.
When the markets are low, you're accumulating more units so that once the markets start running, your units are actually worth a lot more. At the cost of asking a very basic question, and I ask this of you, it's not related to this product, but fundamentally, having worked in this sector for a while, a lot of my friends still don't truly understand the value of compounding. So, again, apologies for it being a very basic question, but can you please help our viewers understand what is compounding and how is it so powerful? And because see, just the sheer numbers that you showcase that this SIP is able to bring you, but there is something underlying, right? The eighth wonder of the world. Can you please help us understand what it is?
Surely. So if you look at, we generally are tuned to think from a fixed deposit point of view, right? We know every month, every quarter, or every year we'll get a fixed amount of interest. That's not what it happens in capital market. Capital market journey is a lot more like up and down. However, if you keep regular investing in the capital market, I mean through SIP or through regular lump sum investment also, and even if the market gives you a decent return of 12 to 14% or 15%, your corpus at the end of retirement can be enormous, unbelievable. Well, I don't have the maths right now with me, but I am reasonably sure it will make a very good corpus for the investors if they keep investing regularly in the market.
Right. So, I think that brings us to a point where, while this is a very interesting theme, I actually was doing some research before we got in here, and I want to share that data with you. So please pardon me, but and I want to get your views also on these points as I rattle them off, because you probably have experienced these points, right? So for example, the market cap explosion. In 1993, India's total market cap was about 2 lakh crore, and we've just crossed 5 trillion, which is about 400 lakh crore in 2026.
Correct.
That's a phenomenal growth rate.
Absolutely. I mean, there are multiple parts to it, right? You can look at overall market growth in terms of mark to market also. India has been one of the largest and fastest growing economy, right? And Indian markets have done phenomenal compared to global markets. That's one point, and that resulted into growth of the capital. But also one important point that we probably haven't spoken about yet is IPOs, right? In the last 20 to 30 years, we have seen close to 1,700 IPOs. And raising close to 13.4 lakh crores of money. That's another huge amount of money that has been raised through different IPOs. So this put together becomes definitely enormous growth for the capital market.
Right, and I think we briefly discussed it at the start of the podcast that how say when you had to apply for an IPO, you had to stand in line, physical forms, multiple signatures, etc. Let me juxtapose that to here. Very interesting thing here. That back in the 90s, the settlement used to be roughly T plus 14.
Yes.
It then came down to T plus 2, T plus 1, and now we're looking at a T plus 0. Almost real-time settlement is what we're looking at. Right? And I think UPI is the superpower that enables this, right?
Yes, absolutely. No, not just UPI, like settlement is basically through technology, where you match the orders and find out whether the net buy or net sell quantity, and then accordingly credit the units or debit the number of shares from the investor account. And of course, UPI also helps swift transactions as well for the net sales if there is a redemption or the sales transaction from the investors. But if you look at the technology, again plays a very important role in all of these things. What is more important to note here is because of this faster settlement cycle, what we have observed is participation increase. Because now you're more assured about the delivery of the securities, and there is no lapse or the drop of a security in between. That was the earlier case as well.
Yeah.
You sign the slip for transfer, Demat account transfers, and those slips get lost also in transit as well. So those mishaps are not anymore there now.
Right. I think that brings us to some very interesting data points that I think Mahavir himself has made, which is that India currently has about 49 crore users who use UPI. We have about 4.9 crore active Demat accounts in India. Over 144 crore Aadhaar, so that means we are able to identify users at scale. And therefore the number of subscribers in mutual funds is only 6 crore. Similarly, we also spoken about IPOs, that although the number is increasing, the amount of wealth that's unlocked is very large, but we're still just at the tip of the iceberg, aren't we?
Absolutely. I mean, look at the just number that you just called upon. I do strongly believe there's a wide space, completely untouched space, where the technology will really help us to very quickly penetrate in the space where probably was not there. And thanks to continued good performance of capital market, long-term good performance of capital market, it will definitely encourage more investors to put more money into capital markets.
So I think, Mahavir, with that, I don't have any more questions for you at this moment. But what I do want to ask you is, in a nutshell, right? We always tell our users that SIP is a great way to get into a theme like this, and especially given the fact that this is a thematic strategy. It's not a traditional broad-based. Given if you had 100 rupees in your portfolio, rather 100 rupees to invest in a month, how much of that value would you dedicate towards this? Again, let's take two examples. Let's take someone like me, say, who's 30 years old, and let's take someone like you, say, who's in their mid 40s. Okay. How do you think does this be a core strategy for me and portfolio for you, or is it the contra case?
I think, in my view, age should not be the major factor. Of course, it's still in a normal sense. It would show that the ability to take risk for a younger investor would be more. However, someone who's more financially well settled, maybe he can still take a lot of risk at the age of 60 also. But what is more important is that risk return profile of an investor. It is important to maybe discuss this with an advisor or a distributor and make sure that you take an exposure to such strategies, which are very niche and interesting and emerging strategies. I think we briefly touched upon this point earlier also, which is maybe somewhere 10 to 15% or 5 to 15% is a band I would expect anyone to allocate their money through a satellite allocations. Core, I would still stick to the Nifty 100 or Nifty 500 kind of strategy, which right. I think they're very solid and very well structured strategies, I believe, right. which will help investors to stay in line with the market movement. And this satellite strategy would definitely add additional element of the growth to the overall wealth creation for the investors.
Right. So with that, Mahavir, now the stage is yours. Is there any other data point that you think we should know, that our users should definitely know? Because I think a lot of what we've discussed may be a little heavy for some folks here, but why don't you take us through a time lapse? Like, what if you were to give, say, an elevator pitch to, say, the folks watching this, how would you convince them?
I think a few important element that has come out while doing research on this strategy is, I think, the growing domestic savings, increasing financialization of savings. I think that's important. Digitization has definitely helped to acquire more investors, more money from the investors. It has simplified the transaction processing and the time and the cost as well. I think these three put together has helped increase the penetration. Increasing liquidity in the market is restoring the confidence of the investors, not just the domestic but also foreign investors is another important point, that you come with the capital and there is ample liquidity in the capital market that is available. I think we discussed at the start of the discussion that liquidity is an essential ingredient of a capital market, because if investors are unable to exit or enter at their own time, it will be difficult for the market to flourish. So,
right. Nice. So I think with that we've come to an end of today's episode. So for the folks watching, our NFO is currently live. Is the Axis Nifty Capital Markets Index Fund. NFO is open till the 15th of May 2026. You can invest till midnight on the 15th of May. So I would recommend, please visit axismf.com. You can read all about the product there. You can download our mobile app, very seamless, beautiful mobile app, Mahavir. I think you
Absolutely,
know about
I have
it.
seen it
Yeah.
already.
You can invest, like Mahavir said, in a few seconds if you're an existing investor. If you're a new investor, you can probably start investing in a couple of minutes. As well as if you'd like to explore the product on your favorite marketplace, you can go there, you can search for the fund, and we'll be right there. In case you have any questions, queries, write in to us, or you can just put it in the comment section, and we'll have them answered. So with that, thank you for joining in, and we wish you a great year at the markets.
Thank you.
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme related documents carefully.